We'll dive into today's. So today we're going to be talking about the lead generation model. And I'm just curious, has anybody in this room ever got scammed by a person calling them asking if they needed more leads? It's like that's your favorite question, right? It's like, do you want more leads? And you're like, but I don't want to talk to you, right? So what we're talking about today is from the MREA, from the Red Bible, right? We're talking about model number 2. So we're going to dive into the lead generation model, different aspects about it so that you can make sure to see, hey, where are you at in your business? What do you need to refine and improve on? And how do you then get it to the next level? And the great thing is I know a lot of you in your businesses, what you do and follow this, that's kind of the consistent bread and butter of what you've already built. So that's what we're going to be diving into. Because this right here, right? This right here is very much your business. It's leads, listings, leverage. We first need to think it. And this is why there's so much with, okay, personal growth and developing your own mindset. Then we need to earn it, net it, receive it, and then give it, right? And around this whole aspect is our value proposition, our database, which is our business, and then your service plan. So what we're going to be talking about today is very much the leads aspect in your database and how that you work and operate with that. So to start things off, we have to understand that you guys, when you're talking with people, you have to position yourself in the right way. And the book goes into the data of what this looks like. But if we go in, this right here is one different part from the Rising Trout. They cite basically that, the maximum number of product brands we can remember in a given category, the brand saturation point in our mind is 7. So I know I've joked to you guys before because I have a younger brother and I'd pin him down and I'd knock on his forehead really hard until he could name enough candy bars, right? That's what good brothers do, right? Some of you are nodding because you understand. So the reality is this game, right, of cruel punishment that I did was basically proving this point that it's hard to get to a certain point and naming more than 7, right? So like it's, again, you do that with cereal. My brother's way too good at that with cereal because he loves cereal. So I would choose something else, right? But the reality is, what are the products in that way? The reality is real estate is slightly different, right? If we all think about it as real estate agents, we can think of not only how many people are in our neighborhood or in our schools, and we know them because it's like, okay, that's our competition. If you ask any person, the reality is they don't think of them as much. And the positioning battle is this right here, is when a seller or buyer chooses an agent, a seller chooses, and they only interview one agent, 76% of the time. Right? Buyers is 59. And then it goes from there to 2 agents and everyone else and how many they go and interview and kind of do that process. So being first or being second is very important on this game of staying in touch with people, knowing where people are at, so that when it happens, you can be chosen in that. Right? And if we go into some data, right? So here's the interesting part, right? So if we go back to 2025, forever ago, and we look at the data, about 91% of buyers said that they would use their agent again or recommend them to others. And then the thing is, what actually happens is pretty discouraging. It's only about 20% of those people actually use that same agent. So the reality is there's a gap in our systems of staying in touch to stay top of mind. Right? We're not a marketing company where we have a brand and we're going out there and spending all of that money to stay in front of more people and kind of do it that way, right? We need to take care of the people that we have and, very much figure out how to close this loyalty gap. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. But the reality is, very much like we talked last week about the economic model. That was model number 1, knowing your numbers, knowing how much business you need to do to hit your goals. And the reality is the path is in the math because numbers don't lie. So if you know what your numbers are, then you can then plan this and say, hey, what do I need to have accomplished from here? And that's what the lead generation model is going to actually give you, is that next step of how do you get enough people and where do you get those people and how do you communicate with the people that have those numbers come true. So we're going to play with some of the numbers, but you know, the reality is, and this is why I joke about that phone call, is because you can never have enough leads, right? That's the reality. So that's why when they call, it's like I still say no. That's a lot, right? But let's go into the systems, habits, models that you guys need for this. There's two different ones that I see a lot of agents doing really well. One is for lead generation is the 3-hour rule. And this is where every single morning you have 3 hours that you set aside for lead generation activities. That's going to be your lead generation, your lead follow-up. The people and agents who do this, and what I've been realizing lately is also just trying to figure out who make that one extra phone call or that one extra text of communication are the ones who succeed at the high level, right? And then the next part is prioritizing this time and treat it like an appointment. Because the reality is we all have things that come up, right? We all have those things that can get in our way. But time blocking for this, and whatever that looks like, whatever your consistency is very important. So I had this is an example, but the reality is, okay, getting into real estate, sometimes like it's just hard, right? A lot of you have now been in it for a while and we're just starting, you know the effort that needs to get put in, and then it's like you see where everyone else is at who kept it going. It's kind of like pushing a train, right? Pushing a train is going to be very, very hard at the start. But once you get a little bit of movement, if you keep on pushing, it's going to be easier, right? And if you stop and the train stops, then you have to start that whole thing over again. And the reality is that's kind of what makes this chart so impactful. Because when I'm coaching with real estate agents, it comes up often that you feel like you're riding a roller coaster, right? You have it where you have, you know, you're closing some deals. It's like time of your life. You just made a whole bunch of money. And then you're like, then the next 3 months later, you're like, it's the end of the world. I don't have anything going on. You know, I want money to survive, which is a good thing, right? So the reality is it's because of your habits with the lead generation side is complete opposite of when you're busy. So when you're busy, you're loving life, you're helping close those deals, you're not lead generating. And then, oh, now you don't, so you realize, and you're like, oh yeah, Taylor talked about this one day. So then you go lead generate, and then it flip-flops back and forth. And the reality is if you start creating a consistent lead generation and just have it so like whatever that is, if that's you talk to 5 people a day, you're going to over time get more and more closed sales from talking to those 5 people a day, right? That's one of the reasons why if you go to Bold, they challenge you to do 20, right? 20 a day of conversations with people is going to make it where that you have more and more. And it's the great part is you're not just going to get deals done. It's going to continue to increase, right? So this is kind of where it goes into the 3 key areas when you're building and working on your lead generation model. The first one is the difference between prospecting and marketing. Who knows the difference? What's prospecting and what's marketing?
Prospecting is reaching out to customers or clients and asking for the business, and marketing is sending out, for example, like a flyer and hoping they call you.
Good. Yeah, so prospecting is you putting in the effort to then reach out to people and ask them for business. Where marketing is you put out the effort for money, right, to have business come to you. So, right, prospecting and marketing both have their advantages. The reality is marketing, you need both, in my opinion, right? Marketing, though, is going to have a delayed response, and it's going to take longer or more money in that way, right? I know some of you do really, really well on social. Social can be done both ways, but usually it's more done in a marketing fashion. If you go on and you also then message people, then now you're doing prospecting on top of them, right? So that's where there's these different ways to do it. And that's kind of where, you know, when you're looking at the different ways, what are your different groups and how are your people and who are you communicating with? So this is a chart for you to kind of think through and say, all right, who are your allied resources? Who's your Met group? and so on and so forth, and then how do you communicate with them. So we just looked into definitions. Good job. But the definitions of this one is allied resources are people in your close circle. I usually call them, in my database, I call them basically my VIP list. So they're the people who I do more with, and I make sure that I'm communicating with them more often. It's the group that I would take out to lunch once a quarter. It's the group that I do that many more things with, because I know that they are also my advocates. And the more I communicate with them, the more referrals I'm going to get, the more closings, like some of my investors who buy more than one, right? That kind of a VIP. And the med group is everyone else that you know. So this is people that you have built some form of relationship with. I couldn't tell you, there's quite a few people that I've never actually met in person that still go into that met group because I've talked with them over years, right? Then you have the next one of haven't met, and that's targeted groups. And then you also have haven't met of general. That's going to be your ways of getting out to people and what that looks like, the leads that sign up for your website, all those different things. So 12 direct, we're going to talk about that. This is going to be basically your marketing plan of reaching out to a haven't met group. So that's your postcards kind of thing that you send to your farm or things like that, right? Prospecting and marketing, there's a whole bunch of different ways. I'm going to show you a chart in a second with a bunch of different options. But this is going to be your outreach. So this is your calls, your door knocking, your networking, all those things. And then marketing, like we talked about, past aspects. So the whole goal is to move people more and more into that center, right? And that's by building relationships. And some of you are really, really good at those relationships, and I love that. But here's a big list, if you want it, of prospecting ideas and marketing ideas. The reality is still this doesn't have the social side on it, because the Red Bible was written before social media. But you can see from looking at this, it fits in the same category, right? If I was going to do marketing and do a new kind of a newspaper, I mean, you could do some form of social media information news about what's going on, same way, right? If I was going to reach out to my past clients, I could DM them, right? And reach out to them through social media. So they're very much the same in the same manner. It's just, again, what tools and how we use that. So one of the things I love with this group, with all the different people you're talking to, is the principle of asking for referrals. And this is taught really well in some of the KW classes. But the first one is you educate people. So give them information, right? Give them information of what's going on in the market. I just heard another new one from an agent in the office. I guess there's this cool program with Dixie that if you go, like Dixie Power, if you go and talk with them, they can put you on a list that's cheaper for your electric bill during certain months. But you have to go talk to them about it. Because I guess through like this month through like October, they have to borrow electricity from another spot. So they actually increase your per kilowatt for everyone on it. But if you go and educate yourself, then they put it in time periods and not just all on some. That's pretty interesting. So right. But I'm just like, what are the random things? That's one random one that I just learned about. Right? Or what are the things that you can help different homeowners with? The other one that I've done quite often is calling people up when tax time comes and they get this thing that looks like a bill. It's not a bill yet. And then they all freak out because it says their home value and they're all like, this isn't how my house is worth more than this. And then you're like, that's good. Right? Right? But how are the things that you can go and educate your people on? And then you go and ask for the help of saying, hey, I'm looking to help more people, right? Whatever that looks like and whatever your goal is. And then you'll get that reward, right? Very much just a pretty simple process of what that looks like. So the next part is that's how you go get more people. Those are all in different ways, right? The next part is setting up your database and feeding it. And this is honestly a spot where I feel too often when I'm talking with agents and they say like how their follow-up's going and I'm like, okay, where is it? And they're like, oh, I just thought of that person. And that's why I follow up, right? Instead of having a database and a system around it. Because that right there is going to increase your consistency to make things happen in that way. Right? So the reality is this is kind of the flow of a database. So you not only have it where you're making and meeting new people, you're getting referrals, you're going out door knocking, you have an open house, all these different people, and they enter into your database. Once they enter your database, then you need to have some form of program to stay in touch with them. Right? It's either the 36 program, missing 36 on that chart, or the 12 direct, right? And this is kind of your way to build that relationship. Because what happens is if you are communicating with people often enough so that they remember you, because remember we talked about the positioning battle of, you know, and I know if you've been in this business, you've called somebody up and they said, oh, I just bought. And you love that feeling. It's your favorite one, you relish it. It just feels so good in the pit of your stomach. Wait, that's the wrong. Yeah. It's a learning opportunity. And it's, you know, a big part is, okay, there's either a time period that they just forgot about you because you weren't staying in touch, or there's somebody else who did better than you. Right? That's the reality. They did better on having the timing right and communicating with your people. So the whole goal with it is to build that relationship, to be able to get more business, get more referrals, and do it in that way. So here's from the MREA quote. It says, people will need to be added regularly as you make new relationships and lose old ones. Right? Feed it, fatten it, but whatever you do, don't put your database on a diet. Right? You need to be adding more people, staying in touch and getting to know more people. Right? And going through that process. Because the cool part is your database is one of the one few things with you guys building a business that is sellable. Right? There's a lot of people that I know who have gotten to a certain point where they're like, I want to retire. And if you've done a good enough job on your database for long enough, then there's a handful of ways to then basically sunset and still be making money. Some people will pay you just a lump sum for your database. Other people love a referral partnership. So it's like you never want to do business again, but you refer, and all the people in your database you do with them. So you don't make the calls or anything anymore. They make the calls, and then you get a percentage over time.
Have you ever been to a retirement party for a real estate agent?
Yes.
Really?
So the thing is, it's just different, right? Most real estate agents will, and that's me too. I'm like, I imagine being retirable is an exciting path, right? Not really retiring in that same way, but this is the one of the few ways that actually makes it more doable, right? Because that's the reality is most agents don't feel like there is a path to that. And it's because they don't have this at a certain spot that they could make that a reason. So your database is your business. Okay. So number 3 instead of 2 is systematically marketing to your database. And this is that part that we were just chatting about. But the reality is there's a few different ways to do it. So one is the people that you met. You need a good 8x8. This is the way we call it. It's cementing your relationship. It's building that relationship past, oh, I just met them once. So if somebody comes into an open house, you have a good conversation, you build a little bit of that, hey, like, you know, we chat with each other, then you should think of what's the 8x8 that I should be doing. That's 8 weeks and one solid communication for those 8 weeks, right? So that could be a phone call. That could be then you sent them a handwritten note with a little magnet that says clean and dirty, and you flip it upside down for your dishwasher. Somehow those stayed on people's dishwashers for years. I laugh because I'm like, that's such a long time ago. But random, right? But what are those 8x8s and those communications that you do with people? And what does that look like? What's that rhythm? And what are those 8 things that you're going to say, hey, I want to add value to your life and now help you remember who I am. Then from there, they go to a 36 touch. Not them. But this is the ratio that happens from the 36. So the 2 to 12 ratio. So for every 12 people you have in your database, you should be able to close 2 deals a year from it. That should be 1 from a referral and 1 because they bought or sold. So if you're doing a great job on this 36 touch that we'll talk about next, then that's going to be one of those big things. And I tell people all the time, don't go try and do all of it at once. If you call people once a year, figure out what's the next right best move, right? If you're calling people every year only once, then it probably should be, can you call them 4 times a year, right? And on top of that, I was just chatting with another agent and they were like, oh, it's been so great. I've now been sending out 5 handwritten letters every single day. And they're like, I love the phone calls because people aren't doing it. They call me and say, hey, thanks so much for that letter. So, and he's gotten already another deal from it, so on and so forth. But what does your communication look like? And then for people you haven't met, if you're wanting to get more people in, you need to be communicating out there 12 times directly to them a year. Or you need to be doing a bunch of phone calls, right? And if you're doing, calling or having their things, the ratio is actually 50 to 1. So every 50 people in your database that you're sending some form of contact to, that's regularly, you'll get 1 deal from that, right? Very different on the ratios, but I'll show you the numbers and where it's like, if you're wanting your numbers of how many people you talk to, what's that? So again, 8 by 8 we talked about, that's like you gaining that mind share, gaining that positioning. And here's some ideas, right? If you want that. It's basically like, what do you want to do week 1 through week 8? And really the fun part is it's all in your court. It's just how do you add enough value over 8 weeks? The next one is the 36 touch. So the 36 touch is going to be that plan. That's going to be maybe 12 emails or, it's your neighborhood monthly market that you send from command or, right, your birthday letter that you write every single year to those people. What are your 36 touch? And this kind of goes into that. So you might have 12 direct touches of you having events and communication. You might have 24 indirect touches. They don't take as much effort, but you go send them out there and it helps them remember. And, the whole goal is it's over 12 months, right? So here's an example of one option to hit 36, right? The most important one up there, in my opinion, is your 4 phone calls. If you're doing your 4 phone calls, which I know a lot of you do religiously, if that's your morning, is calling your people in that way, even if it's a voicemail. I don't know how many times I've been like leaving voicemails, and that's like what my CRM says. And it's been like 3 years of me leaving voicemails, and then they'll call me up and say, hey, I'm ready to buy. And and just, right? Of course, better if they answer, because then you build more of a relationship. But even just those voicemails, help. If you want an AI prompt, you can use this one. I built it a while ago. It will help you refine or update your 36 touch for you to be able to build that communication pattern with your people, right? So if you want that, that's on there. There, so 1 person. So. Oh, now there's more phones. Okay. All right. The next method is that 12 direct that we talked about, 50 to 1 ratio. And going back to kind of what I talked about at the beginning, the path is in the math. So the reality is when you're looking at things, you can choose several options. You can either, one, if you want to only work with people and make $1 million, right? This is what the numbers are based off of. If you want to make $1 million, you need 1,920 people in your team's database that you are having a good, solid 36 touch with. That will, that will do it. Or number two, you could be like, I don't want to talk to a single person that I ever know, and all I'm gonna do is send out postcards to 16,000 people a month and answer those calls and leads. And the 50-to-1 ratio will work that you close the 320 sales. And you can do that, right? Or you could also have some form of a mix, right? So if I have a mix and said, all right, 960 in my database and 8,000 in the database that I'm doing a mailer to or something like that, I can still then hit the same amount as us, right? Of course, this number for the 320 is based on the numbers from NREA a while ago. The amount of cells, it doesn't change, but of course, when the price is higher, you should make more than a million because the numbers are better in that way, right? So this, though, I like to show you because you need to think about your business and say, where am I at? What do I want to achieve? And where were the amount of deals that I was wanting to close? And do I know enough people? Right? Yeah.
320 sales a year is like one sale almost every day.
Yeah.
300.
You got this guy.
Who is selling a house a day?
I love people.
That's
Yeah.
the team. That's a lot of houses.
Yeah.
320.
Yep.
It's
great.
See, she's good at
So,
math.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah,
So-
let's do this. Let's do 2 a day.
Right? I like that attitude. So this is kind of where you got to figure out what you're wanting to look like, right? If when you did the economic model last week and you said, hey, my goal, I'll be like, I want to close 24 deals a year, then figure out how does that look? Like, okay, 24, I only need this amount in my database that I know that I'm doing this high level of a 36 touch. Or I need to go and have it be where I'm doing a 12 direct and putting the work out there in that way, right? Even better, if you wanted to make sure you got it, you would then figure out and do it in both of the columns. And you'd say, all right, if I need 300 people in my database that I'm doing my 36 touch with, and then I also need 1,500 people that I'm sending a mailer to, of course, you now for sure hit that, but yeah.
It's the updated numbers that if you have 201 people in your database.
Yeah, so the 201 was a ratio, so Keller Williams went and looked and they said anybody who had 201 people in their database was like 15 times more likely to make over 100,000, and that's where you cap for most offices, right? So it's like if you have 201 people in your database, that was one of the metrics that they just showed you're going to succeed that much more. So that became a standard I know in a lot of different teams, like kind of throughout Keller Williams. It was like if you don't have 201 plus people in your database, then the team's like, yeah. So kind of interesting. Good. Okay, the whole goal with that is that you then get off this roller coaster and you have it where you're making more money consistently because you now have a system plan around that. Because consistency beats creativity, right? Having it where you have a cool idea to do something and you do it once is going to be cool. You did it once, and you might get a deal from that cool thing. However, consistency and having it where you have a system that helps you get through that, and then add the creativity on top is where it's going to be really cool. Right? Kind of how and where, what.
So both.
But yeah, but consistency beats it. And that's kind of the big point. How do you pick where your consistency level is and then stick to that? Like I said, one of my coaches right now, he tells me minimum I need to be doing is 5 outbound reaches to people. And that's just his stand, like his minimum, right? He's like, if you do that consistently every day, vacation or not. It's his methodology because he's very much like, even on vacation, I wake up before my kids and I'll make my 5, messages or whatever. It's just every day is his methodology, right? But that's what you have to do. Just interesting. What is your consistency and how do you keep that going is going to make all the difference on your consistency and level of income. So, and that's it.